Uh, Hello to everybody. Today is Sunday. No, what I say? Today is the 1st of November and is Thursday. So anyway, just to continue my speech, my streaming on the experience I had in the past decades. The last streaming I reached the point of my youth when I finish the University of Fine Art, basically talking about art and technology. When I'm that time was just in between the generation between analogic and digital. So, as I said before in my previous video, um, I started experimenting works with the video and electronic tools, also photography in my pieces installation and shows I had around. But still, the media was analogic and uh, was really hard to have access to those tools where they were very expensive. I mean, to reach a pretty good quality on this media required a lot of money or to somehow have access to those instruments. And it wasn't so easy at that time. To make a movie or to make a video of good quality or to edit a movie of good quality, it require a professional studio with very expensive editing machine, special effects and stuff like that. I had some experience of that because of my friend that I started this whole experience, Claudio, from Switzerland, and he could access more easily from his side and connection, and so I had some experience going to studios in Milano or especially in Switzerland, where for a few hours we could access to those professional machine and or renting a camera for shooting images somewhere. So this experience was interesting, but still not enough for me to continue. From on the other side, it was just the beginning of the computer introduction. I mean, the computer spreading in the use of computer in the peop in a community. I mean, already still we had access on non-professional computers. The professional one were also impossible to use or uh, to afford because they were very too expensive. I mean, it was impossible. Comparing now for the generation now, the young generation, they can use a very a powerful machine, but with a budget, a very low budget. On that time, we were talking of millions and millions and millions of Italian lire to 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 have access or to buy to purchase a professional or semi-professional computer. the maximum available for the normal public was just mostly computer. They were more like a typewriter, electronic typewriters, and for video games. That's the maximum you could afford for very low quality graphic and video in that sense. So I was just interested to learn and to actually get to use those machine. I had to somehow work in commercial studios, and my first experience was in a professional broadcasting studio in Milan, where I offered my help and to actually learn after after continue my experience. So that was very also, I have to say, frustrating, because with those machine, I mean, very difficult to use, not so easy in the in sense in terms of uh, software. Still, it was pretty for geeks, people very com- uh, very in the informatic sense, very expert, not for unprofessional anyway. So I had to somehow um, teach myself, or try to see to still this experience and the information how to use it. That sense was interesting to fit in and try to understand the kind this world, but in artistic way, it wasn't easy. I mean, I couldn't really see how to use it very much, if not for some few pieces, a few little experience. For example, for some performance and video performance installation we did with the group of Adventure in Helicopter, Avventure in Elicottero Prodotti. Was the group I and Claudio with Ariella and Carlo, we we put together, and actually started in 1988 in Lugano. This artistic group oriented in multidisciplinary artistic uh, no, artistic way of artistic language, basically all interested on the use of technology, and we were able to organizing different different situation where for example, for theater and festivals of electronic dance or electronic videos, of course, and installation, we were able to organizing or participating a little bit in Europe and in Italy. Um, Also, the experience of meeting other artists and people interested in this field, also organizing panel discussions on these topics, on those topics, art and technology. So we were able to do interesting meetings about this. And so you keep me busy for quite a while, and a very interesting organization. Also in Milan, we started to work in open studio of Via Gluck that we could use to as a lab of experimental art and using their space for practicing our installation and performance and using certain machinery they give us the available for you to use. It was quite stimulating, and of course, for the situation and the opportunity, was quite important for our experience and learning how, yeah, uh, what kind of possibilities we could open to our to our work of art, to our experience of artists, to be an art as artists. We participated also on different art festivals in Europe, in Italy, Out of Teatro in Milano, Festival di Camerino, also in Holland, in the Arnhem Festival, or other places in Switzerland. So we were quite busy doing our things, and in the meantime, doing our research. I also uh, was also continuing doing my sculpture, and in the meantime, using analogic and traditional also work in terms of showing to gallery, because in those years during the 80s, somehow my feeling was very very different than the 70s, that was basically our mm, um, our background in terms of studying at school, background in terms of learning and studying avant-gardes and arts that could use and experiencing all kind of different languages. But this was years basically that I guess the culture and the art world was open to certain ideas and expression. The 80s were quite different in terms of culture and art system. Basically, we lived in the years of where the art became again sort of interested in the market, interested in the finance, in basically to become a product, a merchandise, to make money, I guess. And these, of course, this whole world was in contrast with all new research. So it was basically at the opposite. And if you want to have a show or doing an exhibition in a traditional gallery or gallery museum in general, you had to deal with this aspect, with this idea of art more commercial, and all galleries, all dealers, they were interested in what to sell and not on the meaning and the experimental work. Especially if you were showing video, computerized, and all other sort of machinery that were complicating life and not good for making money, I guess. So this whole experience, as I said, it was putting myself and I think all the artists of that time in contrast with the side interesting to experiment and to trying to understand that this big change it was around the technology and social change in terms of uh, technical and production and everything like that. So I mean, almost very like if the two area, like the production and the real life was going in one direction, and the art and culture into the other direction. Basically, the whole society and the whole interest going in the advanced production and advanced technological system was developing in that time during the 80s and the 90s was all oriented to a technological high-tech production. On the other side, the culture and the art was oriented all in a, from to the opposite side on just the market and interested on selling pieces like a big merchandise. So of course, these all things for artists like me was very difficult to fit in on one to one or to the other side because from to the side of the experimental art, require to have access and so be inside the system where you could live, survive, and making art using those expensive tools that I guess in Italy, where I used to live in Milan, also you weren't available for art and for artists. To the other side, being artists just to make money and to fit inside the market system, you had to forget this whole experimental stuff and just thinking on what gallery and people, collectors and people like that were like. And in fact, we had the art system of those years were going back to traditional media like painting, sculpture. We had trans avant-garde, neo-expressionism, new Dada, new Geo, all those expression was almost a big mix of big mix of every expression of art, especially in the traditional sense. Big mix of expressionism, abstractism, minimal, a little bit of taking pieces from all art world, but just to make a production, a product sellable, easy to sell. And this was it. And also because we had at the beginning, the 90s, 80, end of 80s and 90s, about uh, the big importance of finance boom, explosion of finance and market in terms of stock market, stuff like that. So basically, the whole economy went to that direction, and part of the art system also followed that direction and became very used to, the only thing important was how much you were selling your piece or your artwork, and if you were if you were inside that circuit, you were considered famous and important artist. Otherwise, you were a nobody, and that was the situation. This was the big art system, big in terms of, of course, the small circuit worldwide art system, because, as I said, the art system is very small and the very few, very limited in terms of numbers. The circuit, normal people don't they don't really care about what's going on in the art world. So if you talk to anybody, actually, if before they were considering the avant-gardes and this kind of art something that wouldn't represent the normal people, or they were really almost disgusted about it, talking about art like Duchamp and puttana, stuff like that. And the majority of people do, they really don't understand what is that kind of language in the art. But even more, instead of trying to explain this whole thing, at the end, the concentration in the market concentrated only on the merchandise and how to make profit on the art and these products of art they call art. It became a very, very even more yeah, detached by the normal people. And of course, the spectators were like, "Oh wow! I mean, this is a kind of art anybody can do, and they make so much money, for that kind of for that junk." So basically, this was has been the environment and um, my experience for what I lived in those years, for what I have seen, for what I felt living in those years in frequenting, talking, looking the art system in Europe and in the United States, because at the end of 90s, from Milan in 90, no, at the end of 90s, at the end of the 80s and beginning of the 90s, 93, I guess, I moved to New York because it was very interesting to change and have a new experience and just trying to go deep inside where the art world was basically the center of this whole process. And so, of course, moving from Milan and the experience I had in a good way, because I tried all all possibilities and trying to do my best, of course, having experience positive and negative, but anyway, were always good experience and enrich me a lot. So moving back at the 90s, beginning of 90s, I said I moved to New York, and of course, it's been a great experience for me, just to prove to myself how to survive as a young artist in this very cosmopolitan city, and have a chance to meet a lot of young artists, a lot of famous artists, also a big melting pot, a big a place full of everything, full of all sort of experience and art, economically talking, very strong, all different information coming from all over the world. I guess my feeling was really the center of the earth. And so I tried to enjoy it, to experience it the most I could, even if going to the middle of the Western world, where this whole process of economical finance and merchandising stuff was really the center of it, was very interesting from that side, but also because another important aspect I try to mention is that from on the other side in United States in New York, but the whole United States is also the center of technology and where the research and the whole developing of this world is taking place. So basically, having the possibility to compare these two sides, one the merchandise, the consumer side, the merchandise, financial, economical side. The other, the university research, studying and developing with a new industry of high tech was very very important because it was really clear that that was the place. And of course, to me, it was very stimulating. With the whole, from one side, very stimulating for the opportunity. On the other side, it was very depressing or on somehow frustrating because coming as a foreigner, coming from Italy, a little bit like new migrants, and not having a chance or possibility to access to fancy private university, but just try to be on the edge mostly, and of this whole process, which is changing on the society. Of course, was stimulating, and I tried to fit somehow the best I could, and for all the limits of and the difficulties. But somehow I afford to fit in and trying to get the best I could. So experiencing one just want to give a few information about this because otherwise it would take forever. I spent almost 9 years, at least in New York, and the biggest, the most important experience I had was, I mean, I want to focus on the major one. So the major one where beside all the other experiences in terms of life and meeting people in general. But just focusing in the art field, the most important was be able to meet Nam June Paik and Shigeko Kubota, and after eh, starting or the beginning to try to meet and fit inside, trying to collaborate with them. At the end, I was able to fit to be part of their staff and collaborating with them for 5 full years. And that was a very important experience, fitting inside what is I considered the father of the video art. So basically, very, very involved in the art and famous in the art field, but also very famous in the technological and research experimental art using new media. And of course, this opportunity was somehow putting together those two fields, those two areas I was just mentioning before, the economical on one side and the technical research on the other side. In that sense, I reached somebody that was in right in the middle, so was able to do both things. And of course, for me, was the model of this whole experience. He and also Shijiko, the wife, Kubota, were very great artists and very also very important and good artists, but also very good as a people, you know. So just in humanitarian terms. This experience, as I said, was very, very important. Be able to just live all this time together with them, you working together and collaborating, you know, all sorts of things, and also be able to know near and very close the art system of New York and the international in that sense. And on the other side, using new technology, video and laser installation, working, showing art. This was very interesting. The same time, because it was the very was very the beginning of this new media, computer, digital. the explosion of this whole situation with personal computers getting powerful, always more powerful, and but also more available to normal people in terms of economical terms. And it was also the years of very um, uh, the explosion and the fit the internet in the society. I mean, the internet, the web was really exploding, was very going fit inside the old system of economical and life. Was really the beginning and slow and in step uh, in very little time, very few years, became very popular and very spread in the whole society. I remember the 95, 96, where people starting to buy and be connected online using internet. Of course, on that time was very new. Uh, Slowly, the many information, news, and all sort of business got involved and starting to make websites. So I felt there was my interest to just to find out what web and internet was. Um, I I didn't have any knowledge about this whole world. I started to become curious and trying to find the way how to learn how to use it. And that was my beginning. I started to know people in the university. I remember my first experience was at the Columbia University, where I met a few students that they give to me the introduction to web design and to how to use this new tool. And was, I think, important. Of course, after that, I had to teach all mostly all by myself. I mean, as a self um, teaching. And I guess I got very good on that because after a little while I started also to create websites for commercials, and I started my little company of web design, and so those with this opportunity to live as a designer of internet. Uh, so I could make some money and also be able to support my research and trying to learn how to use the web. Basically, was the almost the end of the 90s, and I started to use internet as a tool for my artworks. I started to do some interactive pieces. Just to mention, the first one was East-West Coast Body, and was about a trip I did across United States, coast to coast. And I made a trip for real, and I transferred that experience on online web space, interactive web space trip. After that, I did a few other experience also in chat using my the first connection online for social and with in this field I was able to know few artists that were using that tool also in New York and around. Mostly of those artists actually I remember also for what I remember before, but most of the artists was using the internet connection and computer and internet in particular were mostly coming from activism and cyberpunks. So were very involved in political issue and social too. And I honestly, I wasn't. I mean, was a curiosity in this world. And not that I came from that area, but somehow at the edge of this all social interests. And after that, at the end of the 90s, I was after this experience, and but it was mostly research, because in terms of making art and pieces for the market and for the galleries, was very impossible. I mean, nobody was interested to show that kind of stuff. Until I got invited, invitation from a curator, Italian curator, Tommaso Trina, was doing a show with the Achille Bonito Oliva in Rome, in Tribù of Art, the Tribù dell'Arte, and he invited me for to make a piece for this show in Rome. And so I was kind of stimulated to this art piece, and I called it the Bodydrome. It was a piece entirely made on the web, on a site that I combined different information, different graphics and sound, was able to interact the spectator. And I showed this piece in Rome at the Macro Museum in 2001. So basically, there was a big experience that also somehow closed my adventure in American and the New York adventure. Because after this show, I decided there was time for me to move back to Europe and to Italy. So, guess I could say much more about this whole period of time of my life and my art experience, but of course it require a special focus, a special um, special to expand this whole period of time and a special discussion. So maybe I will develop another time, not now. So for now, I close here this today for today. The end of the experience in New York, and after moving back to Italy, and we'll see you next. Okay, see, bye.